people that came on time. Unlike myself, we should probably start on time. Tonight is the last shiur in the series of shiurim on Hilchos Habayis, and the topic for tonight is halachas about Yichud. Perhaps we can say about this what Chazal tell us, that the final shiur sort of summarizes everything, what all the shiurim are all about the proper kedusha and tahara that we're supposed to have in our homes. When deciding about the makeup of the shiurim, originally we were going to throw in Yichud together with the first shiur, let's have a series of 3 shiurim, but really this topic is really kaveh bracha l'atzmai, and really deserves a separate shiur for itself. Just by way of introduction, Chazal tell us on the pasuk in Shira Shirim Kivutzoisav Taltalim Shchoiros Ka'orev, that the halachas in Torah that sometimes feel Shchoiros Ka'orev, black like a raven. The halachas that we don't enjoy talking about publicly, and we feel that it's not pleasant and it's not proper, inappropriate. Chazal tell us that as dafka these halachas, the Eibusha says that I find a particular mesikus, a sweetness, a pleasantness Hashem enjoys when we learn the halachas of nida and chatzitza and tvila and mikveh and yichud and tznius, those halachas that sometimes we feel is not appropriate, that we should really be talking about them. Or to quote a statement that's attributed to the Tzemach Tzedek with regard to the mode of speech, Zayin Megmin and Zogin Tarmanish, sometimes people are very, very uncomfortable with certain modes of speech, but they're very comfortable with practicing behavior which isn't appropriate. In a different context, the Rebbe once told the Belzer Rebbe, when there was a discussion about the curriculum for girls, the Rebbe encouraged very, very strongly that girls should learn about Taharas HaMishpacha. Because if they're anyhow learning all the nonsense, they might as well learn it from a religious Jewish Torah perspective. And when the Belzer Rebbe commented and he said that unsere Mädchen, our girls, don't have access to such kind of material, they're not exposed to this. So instead of commenting on what he said that our girls are not exposed, the Rebbe allowed that argument. Although perhaps today's day and age, when the walls of the ghetto are breaking down, it's all Wi-Fi and wireless, they could get in through the ghetto also. But the Rebbe's argument was that, told the Belzer Rebbe that people say about you that you have a very, very broad outlook. When I say unsere, our children, I'm referring to Klal Yisrael, and amongst Klal Yisrael, certainly there are those that are exposed, and therefore we should teach them the tiflus, we should teach them Torah in the proper way. But certainly, if we're talking about halacha l'maisa leda samasa shiyasin, we certainly have to learn the halachas of Yichud to know what's mutter and what's asr. And as answering calls regularly in terms of halacha, these situations are very, very common, particularly in today's hustle bustle of our lifestyle. Yichud issues come up very regularly. Just share with you an interesting thing that I was by a fabrengen of the Rebbe, Shabbos Parshas Noach Tafshin and Aleph. And I recall very clearly that Shabbos, if you're allowed to use such an expression about a Rebbe, the Rebbe had a very sore throat. It was very, very difficult to hear what the Rebbe was saying. And you had to strain to listen to the Rebbe's voice. The entire Fabreng was mamish in a different voice than usual. Sunday after the Fabreng, for some reason that stands out even stronger, the Rebbe wished farewell the guest that were leaving from Tishrei. And the Rebbe stood by the entrance to 770, or the exit, for the Rebbe was the exit on the way out. And there was a group of Archim standing there, and the Rebbe told them that the standard bracha, by the Rebbe it's not standard, but which was often the bracha, Fard Gesundheit Hazel Zayin Besudas Tevis, the way the Rebbe said just those few words over there was very clear what the Rebbe was saying, because we knew that was the normal nusach. But just to hear it from the Rebbe's voice was really very, very, very painful to hear the Rebbe's voice. So that Fabrengen, that Shabbos Fabrengen, was a lengthy Fabrengen. And I'm standing and trying to concentrate and listen to the Rebbe's words, and I have to tell you, you have to make up half the words, because you couldn't really, I was standing very, very close to the Rebbe, but you have to use a bit of creative imagination to try to work out what the Rebbe really said, because a lot of the words did not come out clearly. And I'm imagining that I'm hearing the Rebbe speaking about Yichud in a taxi. And I said to myself, this is very highly unlikely, this is probably part of my creative imagination. The Rebbe that's not sort of the Rebbe's style. Shabbos, Noach, Nun Aleph, these years, the Rebbe's talking about Yichud, taxi, it's a shayla, it's a common shayla, you have to be careful. Okay, I did chazar after the Fabrengen, and I felt very uncomfortable when I chazed over this part also, because I thought it was maybe my creative imagination working extra hard. But then Ataka, that's what the Rebbe spoke, and it's in the Mugdi Gesich. In the Mugdi Gesich, there was much more detail with Mara Makomis. Incidentally, with Derech Agav, on a personal level, the Rebbe, one of the Mara Makomis of there, the Rebbe makes reference to my Zayde Sefer Tesharim Tzem Malach on the issue of Yichud. So the Rebbe spoke about Yichud. It's an important topic, and spoke about the common shilas that arise at a Fabrengen that arise with Yichud. We're already sharing stories. I'll share just one more story, and we'll leave it with that. From my wife's side, they're descendants of the Levush. They stem from a family called Mam Yafa. I think that's the correct name, Mam Yafa, because they're direct descendants from the Levush, whose name is Ramardchi Yafa. The Levush wrote many svarim with the name Levush. It's actually very much connected to the Purim that's coming up very soon. They're all based on the pasuk Mordechai Yotzim Lefnei HaMelech. The Levush's name is Mordechai. And then all his svarim he quoted after the rest of the pasuk: Levush Malchus, Tcheles, Chud, Aterezav, Sachach Butz, Argaman. So the story goes that the reason why the Levush, I cannot hear what? Gimel Ad Sheini, just last week. So the story goes that the reason why the Levush wrote these svarim was because once he was in a situation, a very, very compromising situation. He found himself in a place, and there was another woman there. It was a situation of a potential Dvar Aveda. Whether she was trying to convince him to Dvar Aveda, I believe it was just a purely issue of Yichud. And the Levush had to run out from the place where he was, and there was no other way to go through. He was stuck in a home, and the only way he can get out was through going through the sewer. So he went through the sewer. There's no other choice. He was faced with a situation which is not according to Torah. And he was wearing, all his clothing became totally soiled, and at the time he was wearing 10 garments. So he said to himself, if the Eibishter helps me successfully get out of here without an Aveda, then I'll write 10 Sfarim, 10 Levushim. And that's where he wrote the 10 Sfarim. That's how the story goes. The other story goes that he actually gave a bracha that his descendants after him, up to 10 generations, won't have the same Nisayon, they won't be good looking. We're already after the 10th generation. They say actually, there's actually a story, by the way, it's not a Litzanis, they say a story about a particular individual, one of the Breslev Mashpim, whatever, from like a generation or two ago, that he came across an individual who was learned together in yeshiva. I have all the names on record somewhere. And there was this Bachar in yeshiva, which was a very good looking Bachar, very heavy build. And one day his father came to the yeshiva, and it didn't make sense. This is his guy's father. The father was dark, like we mentioned before. And then when he inquired, he was told that this child is actually from the 11th generation. So, and he went back to the way the Levush was looking. Anyway, Amaisa, let's move on. But we also have to learn Maisa B'Poil. Shulchan Aruch is very careful with its usage of language. And I believe there's only 2 or 3 times, I believe, in Shulchan Aruch where the words Ma'od Ma'od are used. Ma'od Ma'od Tzarech Lizar, Ma'od Ma'od Tzarech Le'Yisrachik. And the Perisha and the Bach and a lot of Achreinim talk about this, why the Shulchan Aruch uses by these few examples the words Ma'od Ma'od. One of them is the Isra of Ribis, Geneva, and Yichud. Shulchan Aruch, it says in Even Ezer, Simchaf Aleph, Tzarech L'Yisrachik Ma'anoshim Ma'od Ma'od. You have to go extra careful and keep away from women. It says in Shulchan Aruch. Why is that? Why these cases? But these are things that people have a natural attraction to because of their natural makeup, and therefore they're moira heter. They're moira heter when it comes to money, to ribis, to gneva, and they're moira heter when it comes to the din of nashim. And therefore a person has to be extra careful and make himself boundaries. As the Chinuch says, people should make their own boundaries in addition to the regular boundaries that Torah has made for you. And the reverse is also true, that even when the Torah boundaries don't seem to fit in with your personality, because you know that you're a very careful individual and these things will never happen to you and it just doesn't fit in with today's society, we have the klal of Chazal, Eina Petropis La Arayis. No one could be responsible, no one could be the official shomer to make sure there's no yonim of Arayis. If Chazal make a geder, one has to be extra careful in observing the gdarim that Chazal give us. A general klal in Yichud perhaps is a klal that my Zaydal Vashalom said that he heard from the Marash Engel. There was a Rav in Galicia, Marash Engel, that had the Mishla Rav. My Zayda was makabel a lot from him in Shimush. And a klal that he said, it wasn't about Yichud, it was about Aguna, but I would like to apply that klal to Yichud. So Marash Engel once told my Zayda that whenever he gets a case of an Aguna, and he has to be matter in Aguna, he has to decide whether the Aguna is now allowed to remarry if her husband is alive or not alive. He said before he looks into all the poskim, first he finds out if the husband is actually dead. That's the klal. What he was trying to say was that a lot of the Rabbanim get carried away with pulpulim, have to be matter the Aguna. But if it's likely that the husband is alive, then drop the pulpulim. So all those pulpulim come after the Rav has to have a common sense assessment. What's the common sense? If he was found in World Trade Center, what's the common sense approach? Yichud also, there's both aspects. There's the common sense of Yichud, and then there's the halachas of Yichud. So sometimes we might find ourselves in situations which Torah does not forbid Yichud, but common sense tells you l'srachik ma'anoshim moed moed, and therefore one should make himself all those fences and boundaries as we spoke before. And we might talk about some examples further on. And then the reverse is also true, that sometimes you find yourself in situations where al pi Torah Yichud is asur, but begashmi is practically speaking there's not much to be concerned. In such a case is where we can call upon the Rav and say maybe there's some heter b'shas atcha because there's no other choice, can we rely on certain opinions? Because we already know that the situation is such that the husband is probably not alive, to borrow that expression. In other words, that there's not really much to worry about. So then we rely on a suffix and this opinion and that opinion. We actually find out with Yichud something which is very complex about Yichud, that almost on everything there's two opinions. I mean, it's true about the Kol HaTorah Kula. But in Yichud, there's so many machloikas and there's no davar, butter, nothing very, very clear in Poskim. Mutter, Aser, Sfardi, Ashkenazi, Mechaber, Rama, Chelkas Machaikik, Beis Shmuel. Almost in every case there's another machloikas and another machloikas, and it makes things a bit confusing. So we'll try to clear up the confusion as much as we can. But like I said, we have to use a bit of a fifth chelik in common sense as well. First and foremost, Yichud is a Issa D'Oraisa. There's a machloikas about that too. But I won't keep on saying there's a machlokes about that too, because that applies to everything that we say tonight. But the common consensus is that Yichud is a Issa D'Oraisa. And because it's Issa D'Oraisa, we have the general rules that apply to rules of the Torah that were much more machmir when it comes to Torah laws than when it comes to laws which are D'Rabbanan. Yes, it is true that Yichud with a single woman, with a single girl, what we call a pnuya, was a much more recent gezeira, and it's actually not a Issa D'Oraisa. But while that's true on a theoretical level, it's not true on a practical level. Because the average girl, single girl today, aside from being a single girl and not married to us, also has another problem that she's a nida. Because the Metziah says that most girls don't go to the mikveh until they're married. And once she's a nida, then it's not only Yichud with a girl, it's Yichud with a nida, which actually then again becomes an Issa D'Oraisa. So it's almost always Issa D'Oraisa. Yes, it is true if you have a girl, a 3-year-old girl, she's most likely not a nida, and she's most likely not married, and the Issa Yichud applies to a 3-year-old girl, and they'll have a Yichud D'Rabbanan. These things happen. It could be an Afkamina, an Almana, a widow. Many women are living alone, and they need some help, and have family members or non-family members. Sometimes it is Yichud, not Yichud, depending on the situation. Now, it's not very, very common to ask them if they actually became a widow before they went to the mikveh, after they went to the mikveh, exactly what stage they are right now. If they still a niddah because they never went to the mikveh and they hit menopause, I mean, we don't normally know that information is not normally hanging on the door. So therefore, you have to, there's a question, this might be a question of a niddah. And therefore, and although she's not married, she's single, but she could be a niddah. A kala, l'mashal, a chasm with a kala. So the kala is single. Presumably she's a nida, because most girls don't go to the mikveh, and therefore there's a regular Isra of Yichud. In fact, as we'll see later on, it's actually worse than the regular Yichud, particularly with a chassan and kala. There are situations where it's a Yichud D'Rabbanan, and I'm not going to mention all those situations where it's extra gzeiros of Chazal and Yichud, but just I'll mention one example, that Yichud with a Yid with a non-Jewish woman is a gzeir of Shammai and Hill. Min HaTorah, there's no Isser Yichud with a non-Jewish woman, with a Goya. But that's Isser D'Rabbanan gzeir of Shammai and Hill. The reverse, however, a Yichud of a Jewish woman with a Goy, that's Isser D'Oraisa. So, most cases that of Yichud normally, regularly would be Isser D'Oraisa. Many cases. when it comes to a suffix about Yichud, regardless if it's Daraisa or D'Rabbanan, we're always machmer. Yichud is more severe than other aspects of Torah. We're machmer even by D'Rabbanan for a range of reasons. One of them because of that rule of tzarich l'israchik ma'anashim, moed, wherever in doubt, err on the side of caution, and therefore we're machmer. A practical shaila that a lot of poskim address, you don't know if the girl is 3 years old or not. A suffix, she's 3 years old. Isra Yichud hits when a girl is 3 years old. So, remember, suffix about Yichud, we're machmer. But if here it's actually even more true, here there's another principle that comes into play, and that is a suffix machmas chisar in Yediyah is not called a suffix. What do you mean you don't know if she's 3? It's not a difficult thing to find out if she's 3. So it's not even called a suffix, and if you're mechuyev to be machmer because you have to find out. But even if it would be impossible to find out because all the birth certificates were destroyed and none of her parents know how old she is, right? Could have happened in Russia. Even if it would be a genuine suffix because Yichud is a more severe Isser, even if it's a D'Rabbanan, we're normally machmer. There's a lot of aspects of Yichud which we mentioned Yichud D'Oraisa, Yichud D'Rabbanan, there's a lot of Midas Chasidus in relation to Yichud. Rabbi Nuyoyna, Shittas Rashi, so many things that people are extra out of the way machmer about Yichud, following the principle of harchik min hakirim and adoim eloi, not to look as if we're doing something wrong. But I'm going to try tonight to focus mamash on what we call the dry halacha. And if somebody wants to observe Midas Chasidus, you can always, whatever I say you're allowed to, you can always not practice that, you know you're observing a Midas Chasidus. But we're really trying to stick to the real, strict, dry bones halacha. Just before we go into the actual halacha, there's a general question about how we understand Yichud. Yichud means not to be in seclusion with another woman. But what's pshat in that Isser? Is the Isser because there's a chance if you'll be in seclusion and the modesty is compromised, it'll lead to a situation which is a non-acceptable situation, a forbidden relation? Or Yichud is not because it will lead to a situation. Yichud is Asr, whether it will lead or won't lead. It's be'etzim Asr. In other words, even if we know that this situation could, for whatever reason, never lead to a forbidden relation, there won't be an intimate relation between the man and the woman, Yichud is be'etzim, essentially it's something that's Asr. It's what we call Isser Atzmi. There's a big debate about that. That's one of the typical machlokes in Yichud, and that has a lot of ramifications. Again, I'm not talking about that you know that you would never do the wrong thing. No, that's nonsense, because remember what we said, Ein apetrapis la'arayis, there's no rule that you know better than what the Torah tells us. I'm talking about something else. If there's a situation that, practically speaking, it's impossible that should lead to intimate relations, and we'll give some examples, is there still Yichud? Or do we say that Yichud is only because it might lead to something? Let's just start a basic question. Does Yichud have a Shiur? Is there a time frame when there's Isser Yichud? That's very much connected to that question. Because if Yichud is because it will lead to a certain situation, you need to have a certain amount of time, Shiur Yichud, to be able to get to a situation that when you're together with a woman, it could lead to Chas v'Shalom, to a forbidden situation. Or there's no time. Yichud is be'etzim, essentially forbidden. It makes no difference how much time. Many places can say that regardless, one should be a machem, even if there is a Shiur Yichud, in Torah we say Chatzi Shiur, so even if there would be a time frame, but there's also a certain shear for how much fats and blood you know that eat al pi Torah, but we don't need even a tiny amount because in a Torah even chatzi shear is asur. So only time there's room for leniency if you know that this chatzi shear will never be able to become a shear. One of the reasons why a chatzi shear is asur because a chatzi shear chazal is tarufa. You can eat a half a kazayis of treif, and you have a chance, if you want, you can eat another half a kazayis in a situation which could never turn into a full shear. So let's talk about this on a practical level. How much is the shear of Yichud? Well, we don't know if there is a shear or not, but let's assume there is a shear. Well, again, machlokas ranges in everything, ranging from 35 seconds, yeah, up to 5 minutes. 35 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, and the shear move up. And many places can say one should be machmer already, starting from 35 seconds to a minute, one should be machmer already. That's assuming, by the way, that there is a shear. Remember that we said, a lot of places can say, the Ragashava, for example, there's no shear, and even if there is a shear, even a chatzi shear is asr. But a situation which is a practical example is an elevator. In the elevator, you can be very quickly in an elevator, and you can be in a situation which it won't come to a shear. What do I mean it won't come to a shear? Because this elevator is an elevator that stops on every floor. Okay, everything is possible. things can go wrong. But I'm talking about according to the normal circumstances, it's only possible for you to be in a state of yichud under normal circumstances because it stops at every floor, because people stop at every floor. So there's no chance of coming to the yichud because it's always going to be pachas mikashir. I mean, depends on the speed of the elevator. If it's mamish going to be a minute, you could already run into a problem of a shear. Depends also if it actually gets stopped on every floor. If it doesn't get stopped, if people from outside could stop it, can't stop it. So this is a very, very serious shaila. My grandfather seems to be, in his sefer, tried to find a bunch of kulos for an elevator, and he incorporated in that the Tshuvas Chasam sefer that says that hanisoy and yosim imei edim, that we always have to be practical and test things with a test of time. And practically speaking, it's almost impossible to lead to a situation of a forbidden situation in the elevator. Although I didn't hear anything from my grandfather about this, but there was an individual in my grandfather's shul whose wife was in the elevator, and it was a very horrible story. She was raped in an elevator and killed, v'chulu v'chulu, an individual which happened in my grandfather's shul, and I'm not sure if afterwards he revised the psak or he didn't. So if you're talking about practical experiences, things could happen in elevators also. I don't know what kind of elevator it was, I don't know any details. I prefer not to take questions unless it's mamish I didn't explain something clearly.
How about if it's an elevator and you're in a building where you know the elevator breaks down regularly?
Okay, so then if it breaks down, then you'll always be compromising the shear issue. Obviously, so that doesn't apply. But I'm talking about under normal circumstances, and the elevator goes up one floor and that's about it. So at midas chassidus, of course, a person should avoid being in an elevator in a state of yichud. But if sometimes it's not shaykh b'metzias, or like I said, if you know for a fact the elevator mamish is less than a shear, and it can't come to a shear because that's how long the elevator goes for. It goes up one floor, and one floor is mamish less than a minute. So there's certainly room for leniency. A solution about yichud, which is not an ideal solution, but it's mamish b'shas hatcha gomer, where really person has no other choice, is to lock your door that there won't be yichud on your part. The Mishnah Berurah brings the halach is one is not supposed to sleep alone at night. Alter Rebbe mentions this as well. But the Mishnah Berurah, when he mentions this halacha, there's a lot of aspects of that halacha because of sakana, but that's not the subject of the shir tonight. I want to focus on the yichud aspect. Mishnah Berurah says, but what if you find yourself in a house and there's a woman in the house? You want to leave your door open because you don't want to be alone. But you don't want to be alone by yourself, but then you'll be alone with a woman. So the Mishnah Berurah says, don't worry about the sakana of being alone. Keep your door locked. Shomer mitzvah liyeded avara, you're doing a mitzvah, you don't have to worry about sakana. So the poskim say right away, what do you mean keep your door locked? How does that help? It's because you locked your door? You see, you can open your door whenever you want. So that's a big discussion in the poskim. If you go and lock the door, and the person's on the other side of the room, or whatever, in the other room, is that yichud or not? And b'shas hatchak, when the person has no choice, then we're very makel. Certainly in a bathroom, nobody's ever said in history that you're not allowed to be in a locked bathroom because you never know, because you can open the bathroom, then it'll be in a state of yichud. So, b'shas hatchak, obviously we're makel, and a bathroom is certainly not a place where more than one person goes at a time under normal circumstances. Yichud does not apply to immediate family. When I say immediate family, that yichud does not apply to someone with their parents, grandparents, grandfather, grandmother, sons, daughters, grandsons, granddaughters. Every one of these things there's different opinions, but that's sort of the mainstream halacha. Brother and sister, the halacha is certainly for Ashkenazim, and many poskim hold even Sfardim can be lenient about this, that there's no yichud with brother and sister if it's temporary. If they're in a fixed situation, not in more than a temporary situation, they're together alone, then is yichud. How much is considered temporary and how much is considered more than temporary? Weiter machlokas. Is it one night? Is it 3 nights? Is it 30 days? And a lot of poskim say that if the arrangement, it's not a question of days. If the arrangement seems to be a very, very immediate arrangement just for the time being, it's not sort of a long-term arrangement without giving, nitpicking on numbers of days, then there's really no isra of yichud. I will, however, say that from practical experience and a lot of things I'm telling from experience, just from stories that we hear. I'd rather not say it so many times because I'd rather not dwell on the negative, but stories that we hear from shilas that come up and situations that come up, a lot of times parents are very well versed in halacha but not well versed in common sense. They've left their children alone, teenagers alone, brother and sister temporarily, and the results were not necessarily positive because of a range of different reasons. And again, you have to always use common sense and remember about the beyond the yichud. Remember what we said before. You have to also think of the aguna, if the husband is alive or not alive. You have to also think about common sense. What's a healthy situation or not? When people ask me about cousins sleeping alone, yeah, yichud, not yichud, no one else is there. Shaila about yichud, shaila about using a bit of a seichel anushi. Today's day and age, what's going on? One has to be very, very careful. Even with a brother and sister that we said temporarily, it's okay. There's an interesting avos that Rav Nassan that says that one should not go to a hotel with their sister. Mipnei das habriyos. People don't know it's your sister. I guess one's wife, it's obvious that it's a wife, for whatever reason, or that people know it's a wife. But a sister, the avos that Rav Nassan actually says even a daughter. But people don't know, and you have to always be careful not to look like as if you're doing something wrong, and no one knows it's actually a sister. Adopted children. The Rebbe was one of the first of contemporary poskim that raised the issue that why the rabbinic authorities are quiet about why they're not making a fuss about adoption. With a whole long list of the things that the Rebbe sort of raised the issue, and then the Torah will appreciate it, amongst them Israeli boats, prostate surgeries, and a bunch of other issues which could be serious halachic problems. The Rebbe raised the issue with adopted children. The Rebbe wrote a letter to Oitzra Poskim, wrote about a couple of issues that should be on the agenda of Rabbanim, and one of them is adopted children. When one adopts a child, he could really run into serious problems of not only yichud, but other forms of closeness that are forbidden. Although adopting a child is a tremendous mitzvah, and Chazal talk about the great mile of adopting a child, in addition to the fact that for some people it's a measure of comfort, because unfortunately they have a tremendous tzara that they were not yet zoicha to their own children. But loy kayom manashonim hayom meil, in today's day and age, the philosophy about adoption, I mean, you never know, the pendulum keeps on swinging. I'm not sure where it's up to tonight exactly, but the psychology, modern pop psychology. But at the time when the Rebbe wrote this letter, and certainly a lot of people still maintain that position today, is that the philosophy is not to tell the child that he's adopted, at least in the beginning stages. Whereas in the past, the child knew that he was adopted. Today, he doesn't necessarily know. And since he's truly like an eigener kind, son or daughter, that could lead to issues of chibuk, nishuk, negia, hugging, kissing, all these students that apply, and to the siblings and to the parents. I should mention, because that's not a very well-known halacha, for whatever reason, brothers and sisters, the Rambam, Shulchan Aruch say, they're not allowed to hug and kiss each other. People for some reason think that brothers and sisters are sort of excluded from the list. It's a fetish din of Shulchan Aruch. It's not like a midas. Again, I'm trying very much tonight not to quote any midas chasidus, but to stick to Shulchan Aruch. Rambam, Shulchan Aruch, Davar Meguna, Dvar Isser, Maisa Tipshim, for brothers and sisters, the Rambam says, She'ein krevim le'erva klal. One is not allowed to get close to anybody that's forbidden upon you, including a brother and a sister. And we'll start going into ages, and that's another whole sugya. So back to the adopted children, because it's not brother and sister, and even if it would be brother and sister, like we said, from a certain age, it's also a problem. And because it's certainly not a parent, not a real parent, so there could be a serious problem. In fact, adopted children actually is more of a problem of yichud than any other stranger. Because we're going to be learning later on about a principle called liboy gazbay. Liboy gazbay means that in situations we have a particular closeness with an individual, the rules of yichud are much more severe. A lot of the heterim of yichud fall to the wayside. I mentioned in the beginning of the shiur that about a chas and kala, yichud is more severe. Because there's a particular closeness between a chas and kala, as chassidish as they are, assuming that they spoke with each other and got to know each other and they want to marry each other, presumably there's some type of relationship between them. So therefore that relationship actually elevates the status of yichud to a much more serious status, what we call liboy gazbay. They're very comfortable with one another's presence. Men and women are not meant to be comfortable in each other's presence, according to the Torah standards. They're meant to be different, distinct, separate. I'm not talking about the context of a marriage and family. I'm talking about outside of marriage and family. In that context, it's l'srachik ma'anoshim moed moed. And where people have a closeness due to, for whatever reason, because they're going to get married or because it's an adopted child, that makes not stam yichud. There's a lot of the boundaries of yichud, a lot of the leniencies of yichud no longer apply. So adopted children is actually even more severe. I mentioned earlier that the Yichud starts for a girl at the age of 3. For a boy at the age of 9. What that means, just we should make clear what this means. That does not mean that the girl at the age of 3 has a chiyuv chinuch on the mitzvah of Yichud. That's not what it means. What it means is that a man is not supposed to be together with a woman, with a girl, from the age of 3 onwards. Likewise, when we talk about a boy having the issue of Yichud from the age of 9, it's not something about the boy, it's about the woman. The girl babysitter shouldn't be babysitting for a boy that's 9 and up. We'll talk about solutions later on, how you get out of the problem, because babysitters is a necessity in our lifestyle. We'll talk about that later on. There is no din that a boy and girl have an issue of Yichud if they're little kids, up until they reach the age of bar bas mitzvah. Why the halacha is this way is a good question. But that's what it says in Shulchan Aruch. And some poskim ask this question, why there's no din of chinuch. Some poskim actually hold it as a din of chinuch, but again, we're trying to stick to the mainstream opinion. Of course, we have to differentiate between chinuch al pi halacha and chinuch al pi seichel. Or what the Rebbe calls chinuch d'Rabbanan versus chinuch d'Oraisa. Chinuch d'Rabbanan means the rules and framework of chinuch, how Chazal laid it down for us. And what the Rebbe calls chinuch d'Oraisa means the general principle that you're supposed to educate your children in the way of Torah mitzvah, which we learn from Avraham Avinu, not from Chazal. L'man asher yitzave es banav es beis hayachra v'shamru derech Hashem. A father, a parent, father, mother is supposed to look after their children and make sure, even if they're not at the age of chinuch, even they're one day old, you're supposed to try to push your children to a path of Torah mitzvahs. We're talking right now purely from the strict technical concept of chinuch. There is no chinuch on the issue of Yichud, and there's no official answer that I know why. But the aspect of chinuch, of course, children have to start appreciating. I mean, when are you going to start teaching them about Yichud? Well, you start teaching them when it's already too late. That doesn't make much sense. Okay, but again, we're not talking about the technical aspect. That's the technical aspect only applies when they're 12 and 13. The technical aspect of chinuch, but as in a Chassidish environment, they pick up, a Jewish from environment, they pick up all Torah mitzvahs and they educate to a path of Torah mitzvahs, knowing that there's a concept of Yichud. So, another thing about Yichud, and there's a lot of confusion about this, let's try to make this as clear as we can. A woman is allowed to be in a state of Yichud if there's more than one man there. For us, Ashkenazim. Svardim on machmer, and again, a lot of Ashkenazi poskim recommend it should be machmer like the mechaber. We're sticking to the bare bones halacha. According to bare bones halacha, strictly speaking, for Ashkenazim, according to the Ramah, a woman is allowed to be with 2 men. There's no shaila of yichud, because if one man will do something wrong, there's always another man there. We spoke before about a babysitter, a girl babysitter for a boy that's 9 and up. One of the solutions is to have another man there. And we'll talk about what age you consider another man. So, or if the husband is home, he's just not in the mood of babysitting because he's busy working. However, babysitting usually happens by night. By night, the halacha is, it's not enough to be a woman with 2 men, she needs to be with 3 men. Because people go to sleep by night. Well, she doesn't need to be with men, but if she's in a state of yichud, it's only mutter when there's 3 men. What does night mean? Night means that you have to know if it's Crown Heights or Borough Park or Williamsburg or Meish Arim or Yerushalayim, where they daven very, very early in the morning, Vasikin. In Crown Heights, Mistama night starts much, much later than in other places. That depends on what's considered night in the particular environment. On the way, when traveling, also the numbers change. A woman can't have yichud with 2 men, it has to be with 3 men. Because when they're traveling, they have to take a stopover, one has to go to the bathroom. You're with 2 men, one walks out, goes to the bathroom, you're stuck with 1 man in a state of yichud. So Chazal tell us 2 is not enough. I mean, again, Sephardim never are happy with 2. But for us Ashkenazim, we need to have 3. Okay, not always when you're traveling do you have to make stopovers to the bathroom. Traveling around the corner. So the poskim say that in a short trip, there's no issue of you have to be machman, and like it's not called a derech. Now, what's called a short trip? Should I say again? It's a machlokes. But again, the general approach is that any stop that normally you wouldn't have to take breaks in the middle of the way, that's called a short trip. So if you're traveling from here to Albany, that's considered a long trip. If you're traveling to Williamsburg, that's considered a short trip because people don't normally make a stop on the way when they're traveling to Williamsburg. Some poskim say the sheet is 72 minutes, but generally it depends if you normally make stops on the way. if that's the amount that people normally make steps.
More than 72 minutes?
More than 72 minutes, or not even 7 minutes. If it's about an hour onwards, I would say it's already considered because that's already people make stops on the way. One will have to go out, and if you have to have three men there. Now, but remember, this is only we're talking about a woman with 2 men, and by night, and on the way has to be 3 men. The other way around, this is very, very confusing for people. The other way around, a man is not allowed to be with 2 women at all times, day or night, way or home. The fact that there's another woman doesn't really help. There's a number of reasons for that. I don't know if it'll help understand the background and for these halachas. Part of the idea is that with a woman, there's more chance that a person will sin with one and then with the other one, when there's 2 women there. So is 3 women okay? That's another topic, that's another exception. What if there's 3 women? So some people can understand this halacha to mean that a woman is not allowed to, that a man is not allowed to be with 2 women, but with 3 he's allowed to be. And likewise, if it's on the way and by night, then it has to be 4, just the numbers change. Many people can say, no, that's correct, not a correct understanding. Most people can in fact say that one should be machmir like this approach, and that is that with women you could add the number, you could have 100 women, it doesn't really make a difference. A man is not allowed to be with women. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, numbers don't really help. So sometimes a person is in a shasat chak, will call a rav, and the rav will say, listen, how many women? They'll start asking a bunch of questions, and I'll find what we call in the halachic language, what we call halachic acrobatic techniques, which Rabbanim are very trained in those acrobatic techniques. They learn on the circus how to find heterim. There's another heter plus another heter, and all those factors together, and it's a situation of semi-pekuach nefesh. We'll put everything together. But under normal circumstances, a man should not be with 2 or more women at any time. There are certain situations where the rules start changing all over the place. There's 3 situations which, whenever you're asking the Rav Shaila, it'll be very hard to go through every single halacha of Yichud, but I want to just mention general principles. There are 3 situations. If you're going to call a Rav for Shaila, you should mention, I have the following situation: Iskei Manashim, Liboy Gasba, or Parutz. Which means that a Rav will answer your Shaila based on the circumstances you told him. Just like if you're asking a Rav about a pot, which is 24 hours, not 24 hours, but you forget to tell him that you're cooking chili, or onion, or radishes, and everything changes because we're talking now about sharp food, and that changes the dynamics, and sometimes the Rav will just paskin according to the regular halacha. He's not going to ask you about every possible scenario, and it's not his job, he doesn't have to ask you. You don't have to, he doesn't have to ask the question. Same thing when you're asking a Rav Shaila about Yichud, if you'll just say, a man, a woman, this age, 5 years old, 6 years old, my night, my babysitter, you have to remember this, there's certain scenarios that are like sharp foods. Scenario number 1 is called Iskei Manashim, a man who normally deals with women by profession. A man who normally deals with women has a different standard when it comes to Yichud. We treat him differently. He might be a Chassidish Yid, most likely he is a Chassidish Yid, but the fact that he's exposed to women on a regular basis, he normally deals with women. Not some he's sitting in the store and there's men and women that go by in the store, because people when they go to the grocery pick up the stuff and they're going home. But there's a sort of a more intimate relationship with women. For example, he's a bus driver for a girls' school. He's a principal in the girls' school. He sells cosmetics, sells jewelry, sells women's clothing. Such a person who has regular involvement with women, he has a different status in halacha. A woman is calling up a Rav, I have to be in a situation, have so-and-so coming and being by the house. He's what we call sharp food. He's Iskei Manashim. So the standards have changed. Another situation which the dynamics change completely is what we call Parutz. Parutz is a person who is not your average standard Jew. He has the suspicions of immorality. There's some type of immorality about him. What that exactly means, modern day poskim say if he has unfiltered internet. I'm serious about this. Or they talk about television. He's exposed to stuff which are not kosher, not sneezdik. It doesn't have to mean that you know for a fact that he's been having an affair. That's not the definition of parutz. Parutz means when it comes to the topic of arayis, of immorality, he's different. You don't have to assume that he's that way. But if you know that someone is a parutz, then halachas change. Certainly if you know the person is bechlal, the whole Yiddishkeit is bechlal like a a foreign concept for him, and the whole issue of yichud by him is a foreign concept, then of course that would be what we would call a paratz. And the third, excuse the expression, sharp food. The third type of sharp food you have to inform the Rav when you're asking a shayla is what we call liboy gaspa. I mentioned already earlier, where this person has a particular relationship with the woman that he's having yichud. So, a sister-in-law. A sister-in-law is not your average cup of tea. If a sister-in-law is at home, it's not just a question about a woman, one woman, two men. You don't have the regular rules over here. It's someone that you have a relationship, because not everybody has a relationship with their sister-in-law, but many people do, because you know the sister-in-law's husband. So you develop and you come there all the time, you speak to each other all the time, despite the instruction of Chazal, that's liboy gasba. Chas and kala I mentioned earlier. They have a relationship with each other. A woman, a girl that you grew up together with. You went together to school. Either or you grew up together because you were related or because adopted. Person, someone that you have a business relationship with. And again, you have to be careful. When I say business relationship, I say business relationship that it created some type of closeness. If it's a very, very professional business relation and in a very chassidish way that the person, you keep your eyes closed and she keeps her eyes closed, and you never look at each other when you're doing business with each other, it doesn't have to necessarily be that way, but I'm using an extreme example, then it's not called liboy gasba. Liboy gasba, they have a relationship. It could be through business. A secretary at work is not just your regular stage of yichud. You call up the Rabbi and say, I'm in the office, there's a woman there. It's your secretary. It's not stam a woman. It's a woman that we call liboy gasba. Of course, you're not supposed to be liboy gasba with your secretary or your sister-in-law or any of these things. And you're supposed to make yourself gdorim, siyagim, fences and boundaries, and be careful when you're working with your secretary. But at the same time, if one, and very often that is the case, has some type of relationship more than just very technical, business-like, and never, there's really no feeling of a relationship. No, I don't mean, it doesn't have to be with feelings. It has to be, there's a certain closeness. So if there's that closeness, that's called liboy gasba, and that creates a new set of rules. So when the Rav is asking, when you're asking the Rav Shayla Yichud, remember these three important details. It's not a regular situation if the person, the man, deals regularly with women, business level, professional level, chinuch level, shlichus level, makes no difference. Parutz, he's not that moral and upright, and liboy gasba, they have a particular relationship. Some solutions to the inyan of yichud. So we mentioned that a babysitter could be a serious problem. By the way, a babysitter could also be liboy gasba. A babysitter could start becoming very close with she's a regular babysitter. But a babysitter we mentioned before is a practical example. A girl wants to come and babysit, and there's a boy that's 9 years old. Well, 9 years old, and the girl is already bas mitzvah. She's now to go and babysit, and she wants to know what she should do. Or a boy wants to babysit. He's 13 years old, and there's a girl that's 3. And there's many more examples of yichud that come up. A worker comes to the house, doing a bal malacha, fixing the sink, fixing this, fixing that. Yichud issue. One heter in yichud is, again remember, any of that term that I'm saying from now onwards does not apply to any of the sharp foods. Does not necessarily apply to any of the sharp foods. I mean, parutz, liboy gasba, iskay manashim. But they all have separate rules. And we're following not just a standard situation. In a standard situation, Pesach, Basuch, L'Shus Rabbah, there's a door that's open to the street, there's no issue of yichud. Yichud means seclusion. If the door is open, it's open to a public thoroughfare, that's not called being in seclusion. Yichud doesn't have to be in a house. Yichud could be in the street. Yichud could be in the field, yichud could be in the cemetery, yichud could be anywhere. If it's a place that nobody's around. But if it's a place that people are around, even if you're in your own home, but the door is open, there's no issue of yichud. What if the door is open? What do we mean when we say open? What if it's closed but not locked? That is the machlokes about yichud. What is the definition of Pesach Pasuach? And it has a lot to do with the common sense rule. The rule about whether the husband is really alive. There's some doors that are actually not locked, but for practical purposes are considered locked. Most people don't go into other people's homes, even if the door is not locked. Certain offices, you don't walk in there, even if the door is closed. There's sort of a culture, you don't walk in. And other places, the door is closed, and you walk in, gesundheit, without a problem. And if the door is locked, you break the lock too. That's a bit extreme. So when we talk about the shaila, the machloikas and paskim about a door which is closed and not locked, you have to often think about it. Is it, when it's closed, is it really locked? Sometimes it could be closed, practically closed, but in theory it's really locked. And sometimes it's practically closed, but in theory, if you're looking about it, be'emes, be'pnimius, be'mahus, it's really open right now. So while there is a machlokas about this, but again, like I said, the common approach is to look at also at the, not only at the metzias, whether it's closed, open, or locked, but to understand what the dynamics are. And a situation, sometimes you can't leave the door open. You're not actually interested in inviting all the unwanted elements of society to come into your house and walk off with your furniture. But you can have another. You can create a situation of Pesach Pasuch even while the door is locked, having a window. A window which is in full view of the streets, according to most poskim, is also called Pesach Pasuch. But of course, the window will only help if from the street you can look into your window, not if there's a big gate or a big tree and you can't even see a window. Well, the person will have to tippy on top of a garbage truck, and on top of that, he'll stand with a. And that's not called a window which is exposed to full view of the street. Number one. Number two, you need to be near the window. So the window's in the front room, and you're in the very, very back room. But Chalaim Pesuch Shesarabim. Reb Moshe Feinstein, by the way, holds that even if you're in the front room, it doesn't help. It only helps if the window allows you to look into the entire house. Even if you're in the front room. But many poskim are lenient, and they'll say that if a person faces himself in a situation of yichud, one solution could be quickly run to the front room, which is exposed to the street, open the window, stay in that room, and learn some Torah in that room. It has to be, of course, at a time when doors open, window exposed to the street. There are people in the street. There are certain times that there are no longer people in the streets. And that depends where you live, side streets, main streets, what time of the day, and which streets become more forsaken at different times of the day. That applies not only to streets, it applies to hallways and apartment buildings, top floors, where there's less people. Some people go through all the floors, but the top floor is only the 2-3 people that live there. All those situations create much more interesting shilas about yichud. You can go even further. Sometimes you don't have a window, you don't have a door, but you can make yourself a Pesach Pasuch by taking a set of keys and giving it over to someone else. By someone else having a set of keys, and not only having a set of keys, but being told that he could actually come whenever he wants, and not only being told that he can come whenever he wants, but by him actually implementing it, because if you tell someone he can come whenever he wants, and you know that he's never going to come, that's not called he can come whenever he wants. Or if you have a person that could come whenever he wants, but it's 2 o'clock in the morning and everybody knows he's not going to come. He did his house call, his yichud house call, he came to check at 12, and then he went to bed. He went home. Then the solution doesn't help. But if you really have a guy that's really, he's the shomer, the local shomer, and you give him the keys, and he'll come whenever he wants. He's told he can come whenever he wants. Remember what I said before, there's also the common sense rule. It might not necessarily be wise to be in a state of common sense yichud with a woman throughout the night because you have a guy that's coming and checking on you. Okay, that's common sense rules, but I'm talking now about according to the Torah rules. So that could work. However, if it's late at night, then it's not enough to give keys to one person. You have to give keys to 2 people. Because by night, a woman is allowed to be only with 3 men. So there's 1 man in the house, and you want to create another 2 men in the house, but it happens not to be coming to the house. So you have 2 people with sets of keys that could come at regular times. And sometimes, you're going to try to create these solutions. It's not even worth all the pain and effort to find those 2 people and ask them to come regularly throughout the night. You might as well just have one of the people go somewhere else to sleep, which from a common sense point of view is anyhow a smart idea. I mentioned that on the way, yichud is more serious. Sometimes when you're traveling, you're in a Pesach Pasuch Shesarabim. You're traveling through main streets, regular places during the day. Streets are lit up. Eastern Parkway, cars going non-stop. Sometimes you're traveling in a place, you're going to the country, you're going through streets, and you can tell exactly when there's a street that has a Chabad bumper sticker on it. It's very, very noticeable because there's not too many cars over there, b'chlal. So you could be in the street and still be not in the Rosh Hashanah. Sometimes you could be in a car with tinted windows. So you're not exposed to the street because the windows are tinted. So all these details have a lot of bearing in the halacha. Even if a person has worked out all the solutions of yichud and they're traveling to the country in a way that there's no yichud, it's not necessarily the most sneeze thing for a man to travel with a woman for 4 or 5 hours down to the country. Just not appropriate, not sneezistic. Although it might not be yichud because you're traveling always during the day and always through main streets. I don't know if every single bungalow colony imams can go through if it's mitzvahs like that. The whole time through main streets with cars going non-stop. Place can say that if every few minutes there's cars coming, that's considered Rishos Rabbim. In other words, you don't have to have a street that's mamish cars the whole time as you're traveling. But regularly there's cars coming. Another solution for yichud, which I haven't mentioned yet. There's a heter for yichud called Baila Be'ir. And this is one of the more complicated ones. Never mind the Shittas Rashi that doesn't hold of Baila Be'ir, and a lot of places can say to be machmal like Rashi, but we're sticking to the mainstream halacha. Mainstream halacha is a heter called Baila Be'ir. Baila Be'ir means you're allowed to be with a woman if her husband is in town. If her husband is in town, then there's no problem of yichud. Why is that so? There's 2 interpretations of this halacha. One interpretation is because Isha em is Baila Aleha. A woman is always scared of her husband. There's a sort of a natural fear. My husband's in town, she won't do the wrong thing because her husband's in town. Alternatively, no, her husband's in town, he'll actually come. Shema Yavoi, he might come at any given moment. The nafkamina between these 2 reasons is, if the husband is not coming, he's at work, and he works from 9 to 5, and he doesn't take off work. So while Baila, you have the Eimas Baila, you have the natural fear because the husband is somewhere around in town, but he's not coming. Gashmi's not coming. We know for a fact he's 9 to 5 and he's not going to come. And this machlok is a very serious machlok in the inyan of yichud, and therefore very often we try not to use the heter of Baila Be'ir unless we know the husband actually will, there's a chance that the husband will come. In situations which are compromising situations and there's no other choice, so we sometimes will rely on the fact that the husband's in town, that's good enough. And what does town mean? Town certainly has to be something that begash means you could come from there. Even if you're not concerned, even if you don't think he will come because he works 9 to 5, if you have a town which is so big that there's an 8-hour drive from one side of town to the other side of town, most places can say that's not called Be'ir B'chal. It's considered another city. So if she's in Crown Heights, her husband's in Crown Heights, and a person goes to visit a doctor or whoever it is, and the husband is a woman doctor, and the husband's in town, even though the husband might not come, okay. But if the husband is in Manhattan, Lamashal, a lot of persons say that's not called Be'ir anymore. A woman goes to a doctor, a male doctor. While it's not necessarily the smartest thing to go to a male doctor, both Alpi Torah and also Alpi Tevin, many letters the Rebbe talks about the Maila, even Begashmis, of going to a female doctor who understands better a woman and they communicate better emotionally, etc., etc. But sometimes with mitzvahs, you need to go to a male doctor for whatever reason. He has the speciality. So the woman wants to go to the doctor. But it's going to be a state of yichud. They're going to go into a room and she's going to close the door. So in theory, we have the heter of Baila Be'ir. But first of all, the husband's not coming. Second of all, a doctor is this doctor, especially we're talking about women that go to a doctor, to a gynecologist or whatever it is often what we call iskai imanashim. He actually works with women. And remember we said iskai imanashim, all the rules of yichud are much more serious. So the whole Baila Be'ir is debatable if it really works. The husband is in town. When you're talking about when there's yichud with iskai imanashim. Well, you can have a situation called Pesach Pasuach al Shus Rabim. But highly unlikely that a woman that is being inspected by a doctor on an internal level really would like to be in a situation where the door is wide open, which is also compromising in terms of tznius. So, well, she can have if the doctor's wife is there, we'll talk soon about Ishtar. That's not enough. She's in town. She has to be around. Okay, but not all doctors are necessarily operating with our code and really always work with their wife around. Going to a Haredi frum doctor, he makes sure his wife is always there because he's very, very frum. He could use another solution, and that is take along a child. Now, taking along a child might not be so tznisik for the child, but at the same time, you're running into a shaila of yichud. She's better off taking along a child. And if that doesn't work, you could use a heter, which is a very shvach heter, but that's the best scenario. You could use the heter of another woman. Some people use the nurse coming in, by the way. It's two women. But remember, we said a man is not being yichud even with two women. So what's going to help that the nurse is coming in? Some nurses, by the way, don't just come in. They need to have special permission to come in. There's different arrangements and different doctors with different type of nurses. Some of them come in regularly. Some women actually are machmir. Take with them another woman, a friend, to come with them. But what's the heter? What does it help another woman? So the truth is, even though a man is not be with two women, but by a doctor, sometimes will make it because of another aspect. We have a klal called umin lo marim nase, that a professional is not going to ruin his profession. And if a doctor is going to do the wrong thing with a woman, he's going to lose his license. While we can't rely on that straight out, and a place can warn not to rely on these klalim, and experience has told us that these klalim don't work in reality because so many doctors have already lost their license. And particularly when it comes to doctors, rabbis, I'll say it befedish, clergy, anybody with a very close level of trust, counselors, therapists, in that area, even begashmis, we find much more situations of inappropriate behavior, kiyudum, afursum. But take into account the fact she has to go to a doctor, number one. Number two, the isav kalsav, the fact that there is such a thing that a person doesn't want to lose a license. And she also has two women, so all those factors together, but less b'rei, you have no other choice, people would rely on that. Al derech zeh, I'm talking now about a woman going to a male doctor, we have the same, all those shilas when it comes to a man going to a female doctor. Over here it's much more, it could be much more problematic in terms of tznius for a man to go to a female doctor. But sometimes a man has to go to a female doctor, or a female professional, female counselor, whatever it is. And again, you have to start looking at all the possible heterim, how to make sure that it's okay. He could take his wife with him, unless he's going for counseling to how to deal with his wife. But his wife is with him. It's no problem of yichud. Take a child, you can go through all that same whole long list of heterim. It is such a klal. A person's wife is a suitable guard in terms of yichud. It's different than a husband. A husband, the heter is the husband is in town. Not the husband is a guard. In town means he's not there. He could come at any given moment, and other place can say that even if he can't come, the very fact that he's in town. With a woman, being in town doesn't help. With a woman, it's the fact that she's actually guarding, actively guarding. A wife, I mean. A person's wife is a suitable guard in terms of yichud. So if you ever go into a situation where your yichud standards might be compromised, take your wife with you, it's not a problem. She doesn't have to mamish be in the room as on top of your head non-stop. She can go around, she can go out, come in. She walked out for a second, coming right back. She went to the store, but she's coming back any second. The store, which is right mamish around the corner, that's also fine. But it's not just the fact that she's in town. And most poskim hold that not only a person's wife is a suitable guard, but a person's mother, a man's wife, a man's mother, a man's daughter, and even a man's sister. Remember that we said that one is not allowed to be in a state of yichud with a sister if it's long term. But when it's short term, where yichud is mutter with a sister, so she can also be a guard. So anybody from the man's, a relative like a mother, sister, daughter, being there as a guard could work. And sometimes we can use a different form of a guard, which is children. Children are also very, very good guards. In fact, in many ways, children are better guards than any of the other guards. Someone mentioned earlier, I think it's here right now, there's a type of protection used in halacha chamish nashim soin zu. I'm not going to go into that because there's many shilas about how to apply that on a practical level. Certain situations where there's two women which have a particular, in halacha, not necessarily a positive relationship, that also is a form of protection. That's another sugya. Children, I'm talking now about children. Children can be a suitable form of protection. In order for a child to be a guard, there are two very important principles. The child has to be a child that appreciates when something wrong is happening. Some children are too young, they don't even realize there's anything wrong about it. We call that in halacha yodeya tam bia, understands the concept of what intimate relations are about. At the same time, the child can't be too old where he himself turns part of the problem. We call that in halacha einoi moisur einoi moiseres asatzma labia. So the child is the perfect age, the middle age, where he or she will appreciate something is going wrong and be able to be on the lookout, and at the same time won't become part of the problem because you're also having yichud with that child. For example, yeah, I'm going to mention. For example, again, the poskim talk about so many different opinions about ages, but again, we're trying to sort of give some sort of general framework over here. A girl from the age of 3, many poskim say, can start being a shomer, although the Moshe Feinstein questions this very strongly. If today's day and age, a girl, begashmis, in the age of 3, understands what's going on in this Indian. But many poskim say that a girl from the age of 3, because al pi halacha, yichud can start from the age of 3. So if in the age of 3 she's considered sensitive enough to appreciate, and not past the age of 6, 7, or 8 maximum. And again, there's a range of views, and it depends on your situation. So the Rav will ask, what are the age of the children? If you're asking the Rav a child, you could give him all the information first. How many children, what age, etc. A boy could be a shomer. The Tzemach Tzedek writes very clearly, at least we have a Tzemach Tzedek about this. Tzemach Tzedek writes very clearly that a boy in the age of 5 is considered a shomer. So under 5 we don't know. Other places before, beyond 5, the Tzemach Tzedek writes 5 is already a shomer. And the Tzemach Tzedek, the Piskadinim writes, not more than 9. 9 years old is already not considered a shomer, because 9 years old he's already part of the problem, not part of the solution. Now a shomer, by night, one shomer is not enough. Just like we said before, that if a woman is with 2 men, by night it has to be 3 men, because somebody might go to sleep. If there's a child, a shomer, you need to have 2 shomer, because one of the children will go to sleep. In fact, most likely both children will go to sleep, but at least one of them might wake up at some stage. Some people question this very strongly because they say in today's day and age, kids go to sleep, they sleep through the night, etc. Again, but I'm not looking for any extra chumness. Just want to stick to the way the mainstream approach of poskim. And that is why a chassan kala, if the kala is a nida and the chassan is with the kala, although with a person's own wife there's no isra of yichud with a nida, but since it never was his wife yet, even though there was a kedushin, a chutbah kedushin, but he never had a chance to have relations. So a chassan with his wife, there has to be 2 shoymim, 2 children by night, and the minhag is to take a boy and a girl to be in the house. Common situations of yichud are buses. Person could be in a bus, last person on the bus could run into a state of yichud. Some driver's a man, 1 woman, and 1 man left. It's nighttime. So some men are very, very machman, they get off the bus, and then they leave the woman to be stuck with the shayla of yichud. So you have to be careful of sort of what you're doing. People are stuck, they went to a chasna, they went to Borough Park, to Williamsburg, to somewhere for a chasna, and then the woman needs a ride home. And there's a very, very generous man at the chasna, and he's offering her a ride. But it's not just a situation of yichud. It's nighttime, it's late at night, you come back to the chasnas and Williamsburg finish much later. Mitzvah tans and you name it. Serious shahs want us to really look at and evaluate the situation. A taxi driver is an extra heter, because a taxi driver, we have the extra heter that I mentioned before, he doesn't want to lose his license. Not a very straightforward heter, and that's the thing that the Rebbe spoke about, particularly yichud with taxis. Yichud, that the Rebbe spoke that there is an advantage, although from a sneeze point of view, there might be a disadvantage with women driving. And the Rebbe once wrote to a woman that was in a car accident that she should find out if she violated sneeze in her driving, because there are certain communities where they have a standard that women don't drive, and if certain communities have a certain standard of sneeze, violating that might not just be violating a community standard, it might be considered violating a Torah prohibition, because that's the community standard of sneeze. And therefore, the Rebbe wrote to a woman which had an accident, she should look into that. At the same time, the Rebbe by this Fabring spoke, however, there's a positive to women driving when it comes to yichud. Because if a woman needs to go somewhere, she gets a woman driver, car service, taxi, which has a woman driver, she could avoid the Shaila of Yichud. And for a short while after that Sikha, the Crown Heights car service is advertised, woman drivers available. And like many things, it got forgotten after a while, but something that the Rebbe was motivated very, very strongly about. Offices, it's very, very obvious, sitting in the office late at night with a secretary, whatever it is, serious Shailas of Yichud, wants to really set up their system that they don't run into a Shaila. Ambulance. Yichud applies even to someone who's in a situation of who's not well. Hatzalah takes a woman to the hospital. Hatzalah or regular ambulance takes someone to the hospital. A man and a woman. If it's at night, then a woman with two men is not enough. On the way is also not enough. I mean, Mistama going to the hospital over here in Crown Heights, going to a nearby hospital is Mistama not considered a way, traveling away. It's a very short trip. But it could be nighttime. You need to have three men. So, the Beis can talk about a very interesting shaila. A woman is going on Shabbos to a hospital. Should the husband come along to avoid Yichud? Or should he try not to desecrate Shabbos by coming along? He's faced with a situation of Yichud versus Chil Shabbos. It's a very, very serious shaila. And many Poskim say, no, Yichud is a more serious. He should go into the car, the hospital, the ambulance, whatever it is, the Hatzalah, to make sure there's no issue of Yichud. So again, just points out the Yichud, even, of course, you have to take into account Pikuach Nefesh is Pikuach Nefesh, and there's no other way than Pikuach Nefesh is Doicha Kala Teira Kala. According to many Poskim, not all, even Yichud. But still make sure that the situation is one that's not compromised. They say a story about one of the Polish Rebbes, I don't know who it was, he went through a surgery, and then he had in his room, there was a nurse in his room, and he was after a very serious surgery, and jumped out the window, because he found himself in a state of Yichud, and no one else was around. I don't know how this Chassidim abandoned their Rebbe, but okay. Very often, a bacher brings friends over to the house, a girl brings friends over to the house. This is not only an issue of Yichud, this is an issue of, I mentioned the whole time about common sense. Harbe Chavedim Oisa, Harbe Yalda says, the Gemara says, Harbe Yayin Oisa, friends in the house. If Bachram are bringing friends, and girls shouldn't bring friends. If girls are bringing friends, Bachram shouldn't bring friends. Having guests at home, it's easy having male guests or female guests. I'm not talking about having families, I'm talking about Bachram. Some people have a lot of Bachram, a lot of girls. They do a lot of Hachnasas Archim, and a lot of Misayei De'evid Aveda. That could also be a problem. So one should be careful to make sure that it's in a way that doesn't compromise Yichud. Rabbi Chadakov told certain yeshivas that the Bachram should not go to any house with his girls that are 3 years old. Now, while that might be a standard that for many of us is a bit beyond our level, but we certainly can, I don't know if it's the name of the Rebbe or not, but certainly we can appreciate that it doesn't make sense to bring over female guests when there's Bachram at home. A related topic, although it's not Yichud, but it's a serious topic, is the issue that many modern Poskim coined the phrase Yichud with internet. Although I don't know if there is, you can find a Makar and Chazal that one is not allowed to be in a state of Yichud with the internet, but certainly this is something that virtually all Rabbanim, Rabbani Anash and Rabbanim of other circles have come out very strongly about the fact about having Yichud, about having internet without some form of protection. Some say shouldn't have internet altogether, but I'm talking about at least some form of protection, whether a filtering system, whether a monitoring system, or both. And Aniya Gever Isi Bani Yami, they're stating from practical examples from Shalom Bayis situations, Berubam Kekulam, Nefshar Gar Kulam, the internet plays a very, very important role. But besides from that, this is purely halacha thing. It's just anybody who has common sense will know that one is not allowed to bring into their house a book which has non-sneezing pictures in it. And certainly if they're extreme non-sneezing pictures. There's really no difference in halacha if it's a physical book or if it's a virtual book. Imagine a person says, I have a book. The first 20 pages are not sneezing, but I'm only going to use the next 40 pages. So you can have millions of pages, virtual pages, but some of them are not sneezing. At least some form of protection. There's people that are mumchim and they'll tell you, and there's not too many people that I know that will say that it didn't happen to them. They were on the internet, an unfiltered internet, and they didn't come across a place, b'mezid or b'shoigig, which was inappropriate. So poskim, and like I said, I don't know if any exception to this rule have said that one has to have some level. That's in relation to yourself, because ein apotropos la'arayis. You can't even say that I'm different and I don't need a shmira. How much more so that we know that so many kids have access to their parents' internet, whether on their phone, on their smartphone, or whether on the local computer in the house, so many, and the parents have kiviyachal parental controls, and the kids know how to undo all the parental controls. Ki yidur mefursim, stories, stories like that. So it's important to make sure that we have the proper protection. And on the note of Yichud, I'll just add about the inyan of tznius bichlal. In terms of having a holy home and following halachas properly, the halacha is that a man is not allowed to say a davar shebekdusha, is not allowed to say any words of Torah or tefillah in front of a situation where this tznius is compromised. So if a woman has hair from her tichel, one strand of hair, which is sticking out, that's a violation of tznius, and therefore one is not allowed to say Torah or tefillah in such a situation. According to the Alter Rebbe, you need to not only close your eyes, you need to actually turn around. Tzemach Tzedek is maybe a bit more lenient, and maybe sometimes you could rely on just closing your eyes. It's considered erva, star be'isha erva. It makes a difference. She's a niddah, she's not a niddah. The hair, the just the few hairs by the side of the ear, which can't really get them under the tichel. There's small technical details over there. Me'ikra din, the issur of having hair exposed is only in the streets, but really, the halacha is that we're machmer even by Beis and even by chatzar. Certainly if there's men around, then the house becomes like the street and doesn't really make a difference. That applies to not only the hair, any other parts. If a woman is not careful, is not covering her elbows properly, or she's not wearing stockings, there's a famous tshuva of the Tzemach Tzedek where he writes in terms of hair. But in passing he mentions, when you tell me it's a minig, and what if the woman would have a minig that in the summer their thighs are exposed? Would you tell me that it's a minig? Certainly this is not a minig, this is a minig which is the same letters as the word Gehenim. Because if you would say that whatever the woman do that's considered a minig, and if it's okay, then how come Yeshaya Hanavi says that the reason for the churban was because women were going around with their thighs exposed? Why is he, sorry, not thighs, because according to the Alter Rebbe, shoik refers to the bottom half of the leg, from the ankle and up. So why does the Navi talk so strongly? Why doesn't it say if that's what the women were doing in the time of Yerushalayim, in the time of the churban, that's the minig? Obviously, such a minig is Isis Gehenim. So if a woman doesn't have her knees covered like the Rebbe says, even while she's sitting, one is not allowed to say a davar shebekdusha. How to be mashpia in a woman, influence her, how to dress correctly, tznizik, that's a separate discussion, that's not the subject of tonight's shiur. Then there's a lot of chachma, eitzah, tvuna, to know how to do that. But in terms of what the halach is, one is not allowed to say kiddush, havdalah, benching, davening, etc. in such a situation. Tight clothing. Same halacha. According to halacha, again, I'm not talking midas chasidus right now. Tight clothing, according to halacha, is considered exposed. It's not considered a covering. It's not upsa. There is what we call the spirit of tznius, and that's a whole separate discussion. Some people keep all the rules of tznius, and they violate the spirit of tznius in a very strong way. That's a separate sugya. I'm talking about halacha. According to halacha, there's rise from many gemaras. Anything which is tight, which accentuates the shape, is considered as though that part of the body is exposed, which is in itself a very shameful thing, but it's also a problem for a man to be saying a davar shebekdusha. Why is this being mentioned to men? Because it's important that we mechanech our children. The Rebbe says we have to start educating our children from the age of 3 onwards. Al pi shulchan aruch, from the age of 3, mibaz gimel v'yom echad. Al pi shulchan aruch, mibaz gimel v'yom echad. Kvar tzricha lahaschel l'snaig b'tznius. A girl has to start keeping tznius. So we have to teach our 3-year-old children stockings, tights, elbows, all that stuff. When unfortunately a lot of people are very good teaching the 3-year-old children, but it starts with 3 and it finishes a bit after 3. So not only 3, after 3 as well. But important to teach our children, have a proper chinuch, and important to understand our responsibilities in terms of the inyan of tznius. I'll just finish with one more thing in relation to hilchas abayis, not related directly to chinuch, to tznius and to yichud, and that is just an important halacha, that when a person gets married, he gives a ksubah to his wife, and at all stages you have to know where that ksubah is. If the ksubah is lost, according to halacha, they're now allowed to be in a state of yichud. That's the connection to yichud. And from experience, very often when I do a city kedushin for a couple, I ask them to bring their parents' ksubah. And very often I find they don't know what the ksubah is, just because it happened. They were asked about it. Sometimes we find that happens, unfortunately very often also, we have ksubahs that we find that have mistakes. Presumably the Rav might have been a good Rav, he might have made a mistake, or he maybe wasn't Yedei B'tiv Gittin V'Kedushin, and he doesn't know how to write a proper ksubah. Some of those mistakes invalidate the ksubah, and we have to write a new ksubah called ksubah d'shtach b'tusa. That happens very regularly in our offices. And sometimes the mistake is one that makes the ksubah okay, but there are some people that go like, checking mezuzah, go checking ksubahs. It's like a whole Kabbalistic thing to make money. mekubalim, melashon mekablim. They make a lot of money from this business of checking ksubas. But I'm not talking about a fad of ksubah checking. I'm talking about just al pi halacha. Sometimes it's pashut takanat kasher, and sometimes the ksubah is not around. And as soon as one finds out the ksubah is not around, they have to go make sure that the ksubah. It doesn't have to be at home. It could be in a safe. It could be in some other place. It could even travel overseas, as long as you know where the ksubah is. Al lebish to help him. If this is the last week of the series of shiurim on Beis Yehudi, that we should help make sure that our homes should be a Beis Yehudi Chasidusi. We should act in the proper way. We should have a Bnei Beis act in the proper way, and then we'll be zeicher to the ultimate state of Yichud of Knesset Yisrael with the Eibusher. At the moment, we're in a sort of a mid of an interesting relationship. We started a relationship at Mountain Torah, and the Eibusher hasn't consummated the relationship because a couple thousand years have passed in between. But when it comes to Laws of Yichud, it will be the ultimate nisun and the ultimate yichud, us and the Eibusher alone, and we'll live together in the ultimate Beis Yehudi Chasidusi, Beis Mashiach Tzedkeinu, take from Yad Mamish.